The Kansas City Chiefs are 8-0. They are chasing perfection. Today, we're going to dive into their schedule and see, is that a realistic scenario this upcoming season? After that, we're going to have a complete Week 10 deep dive, our picks, power rankings, and more. Let's get into it. All right, Amir, starting 8-0 doesn't happen often. Now, let's just be completely honest. So I wanted to look back at some of these other teams that have had similar records to this point in the year, in the recent years, and see how did they finish, right? Did they ultimately finish the goal, which is to win the Super Bowl? So since 2018, we've had five teams, outside of this current Chiefs team that have started 8-0 to this point. The 2018 Rams, 2019 Patriots, 2019 Niners, the 2020 Steelers, that was a crazy year, and the 2022 Philadelphia Eagles. Out of those five teams, outside of the Chiefs, of course, three of those five teams have made the Super Bowl. They all lost in the Super Bowl, Amir. So it's no guarantee that this Chiefs team goes on to win their ultimately third consecutive Super Bowl, which is something that we have never seen in NFL history. But Amir, it's scary there in Kansas City. Top 5 defensive unit, top 5 coaching staff. You have the best player on the planet leading the charge with a talented offensive group around him. It doesn't look like there's many flaws with this team at the moment. Amir, your initial thoughts on this Kansas City Chiefs team. Do you think as of this point in time, they should be the favorites to win their third consecutive Super Bowl?
Yeah, well, I definitely think they honestly should. Obviously, people looking from the outside are going to look at Detroit dominating these teams, but it's like me and you talked about this last year, last playoff run. Don't bet against Patrick Mahomes.
No,
I went ahead and I bet against Patrick Mahomes
three straight
three times
times.
in that playoff run. Three times. Three. And he proved me wrong every single time. And it's like now, what's really scary is he's not even playing his best football. He's not playing to his normal level, and they are still winning every single week. And this defense, last year, me and you both were saying last year was the best defense he's ever had. This year, they're even better. That run defense is scary, and the secondary is scary. And the most important thing that's really most impressive is that this is a homegrown unit. This isn't a unit that was basically traded for. Guys being brought in out of free agency. This is
Yeah.
basically a full drafted unit.
Yeah, I mean, there's even guys like Justin Reed, who Houston gave up on him after a couple down years, and then hey, he's found his stride here in Kansas City. That's just one piece to the puzzle, but he's playing his best career football on the back end of that Chiefs defense, and he's a key part of that defense on a weekly basis. But on your screen now, you have the remaining Chiefs schedule. Of course, a lot of divisional games throughout this stretch, but what I want to do is for the both of us, we're going to go through and predict the schedule, and we're going to say, do we think that they can be 17-0? And if we do believe that, is that the smartest option for a team that's trying to win their third consecutive Super Bowl? But let's get into it here, man. I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. The Broncos, I think you can win that next week. After that, going to Buffalo, you might say, oh, and Buffalo wants to win this game. This is a big rivalry, at least in the last couple of years. In Buffalo, they're going to want to make a statement here. I don't think that happens. I think the Chiefs have too much offensively and defensively. They get another win there. Carolina, that's not a conversation. Come on. They need to figure out their quarterback before they can figure out who wins. But who knows? In that matchup, I think that could be the first week where we get the full Jonathan Brooks workload. He plays like Alvin Kamara. Excited to see if that can translate to the NFL field. Week 13 on a Friday night, Black Friday, of course. The Chiefs win that one as well. Now, this is the point in the season where to me, they are 12-0. This is a
Yeah.
team that is heading into some very tough and physical games ahead of them in the Chargers, the Browns, Houston, Pittsburgh, and Denver. Those are going to be dogfights because those are four very physical teams. I think, hey, it was a close matchup week one, or the first time they played. I think Jim Harbaugh in this LA Chargers unit, a unit that at this point in the season will be fighting for a playoff spot. Kansas City, I mean, hey, at this point in the season, you're due for a loss. And I'm going to say it's a
Yeah.
divisional opponent that hands you your first loss on the season. Week 15 at Cleveland. Tough environment to play at this point in the year. But, if Deshaun Watson turned out to be average, maybe I would give the Browns a shot. I'm going to say they get back on track with a win there. Now, Houston, big time matchup. Now, I think at this point in the season, Kansas City's going to have the number one seed locked up after that win versus Cleveland. But I'm going to say you win that other one. And now this is a situation, Amir, where at this point, you are 14-1. You have the number one seed clinched. You don't need to play your starters the rest of the season. But week 17, Wednesday night, there's only a 4-day difference from playing Houston, which is a tough matchup, and then you're playing at Pittsburgh on a Wednesday. Week 17, I think this is the last week we see your starters just because. And I'm going to say you lose that one with your starters, right? Because again, there's only a 4-day difference between Houston and Pittsburgh, two teams that are be fighting for playoff seeding at that point in time. You just don't come into that game as hungry as the teams opposed for, or again, the teams that you're facing. And I think week 18, you rest your starters. You lose in Denver, tough environment. Bo Nix gets a good statement win and performance to close out his rookie season. So ultimately, I think you finish 14-3, still have the number one seed. You have your starters rested for the playoff run. I think that is, again, to me, it's crazy to say they're going to lose 3 more times, but I think this is a very realistic scenario. Amir, let's see if you agree with me. It's your turn. Week 10 through 18. How does the Chiefs schedule play out to you?
So for me, I have them winning that game against Denver. I think Bo Nix and this Denver offense still isn't ready for Mahomes just yet. After that, you go to Buffalo, and I want to lean towards Josh Allen because he's my favorite player. But KC, honestly matches up perfect with them, and I can really see KC, not dominating them, but that defense will really make it tough on him and that Buffalo lackluster offense. After that, Carolina with no problem. I think they handled that win with no problem. Now, after this. When I was looking at the schedule, really, I'm gonna be honest, this game right here, or the Chargers game, I wanted to give him his first loss, but I really didn't know how to go with it.
Yes.
So week 13, I think they still barely squeezed by Las Vegas. It's a divisional opponent, so it's gonna be tough. After that, against the Chargers, I think they barely squeezed against this. But I think at this point, every win is getting even harder and harder.
Yes. Yeah.
After that, Cleveland. I didn't go to Cleveland. They beat us. Honestly, we're not ready. We're just trying to figure out our quarterback at this point. Then, week 16, they go, they play Houston at home. And I can kind of see this game being similar to the Buffalo game last year. Buffalo kind of started off a little shaky. Even though Houston, has a good record right now, they kind of started off underperforming to, the standards that we saw them doing. Then, once guys start getting healthy, I think at this point, Nico Collins will be back fully stride, healthy. The defense will be back healthy. I think at this point, Stroud and Houston's going to honestly get going, get clicking. So I think they drop this game barely. They go to Pittsburgh, get back on track, win that game, lock up the 1 seed. And week 18, honestly, I had them winning, but really, at this point, I'm kind of looking at the schedule as if they're not resting their starters. If they are, they obviously lose this game. But I'm looking at it as if everyone was to play.
Yeah. That definitely changes, again, the outlook and how we view this team in week 18. Now, Denver, who knows? I mean, they're still in the bubble. I don't know if it's realistic that they make a playoff push, but if they're in the mix, they're going to need that win a lot more than Kansas City. And when you have the home crowd behind you, tough game again in January or in December, excuse me. I mean, that's just the game that Denver's going to be more motivated to play than the Kansas City Chiefs. And especially if the starters are rested, Denver should win that one. So, Amir, just to close out here, you have them finishing at 16-1. I have them at 14-3. Regardless, this is a team that we both think should win their 3rd straight Super Bowl, or at least that's what we're projecting at the mid-season mark. And they should get the 1 seed pretty handily. I don't think outside of losing maybe a couple games because of, I guess, how hard you might be pushing for a 17-0 season, it's going to catch up to you at a certain point in the year. And outside of losing a couple games you probably shouldn't, this team's fine. They're going to go to the playoffs and still compete with the best player in the world leading the charge. But now let's get into a segment that you guys enjoyed last week. So, hey, we're going to bring it back. We're going to give our favorite 3 props here going into this weekend. This is not betting advice. This is just what we like going into this week's slate of games. And, of course, Amir and I like to bet a lot off the podcast. So let's bring our picks to you guys. We're going to start with our player props, Amir. Of course, we each have a player prop, a game line, and of course, a game total that we are either going to go over or under. For me, let's get it started. Christian McCaffrey's back, and what does he do best with in a Niners uniform? He scores touchdowns. I have him for an anytime touchdown in his return game against the Bucs. He's going to be used, in spurts. He's not going to get a full Christian McCaffrey workload. But even in week 1, when he was still banged up, they were trying to get him that touchdown, which he didn't ultimately get. But I think he gets his first touchdown of the year in his return game against the Bucks.
So for my first player prop, honestly, I was looking at this line. I thought it was way too low. So I have Lamar over passing yards at 232 and a half. And so Lamar has covered this line in 5 consecutive games. And through the season, I think it's like 7 out of 9 games total. And now he's matching up against a Bengals defense who's bottom 5 in the league. And earlier this year, he threw for 350 on him. So I think this line is too low. I think he covers this line around the 250 mark. Or, honestly, if you want to be safe, I could take an alt line at around 225.
All right, now let's get
Yep.
into our game lines of the week. And I'm going to take Minnesota -4 on the road, which might be a shocker, but on the road at Jacksonville. Jacksonville's banged up. They might have Brian Thomas back this week, but even if they do, the rest of the offense around Trevor Lawrence is very subpar. We don't even know if ETN is going to play in this game either. And without ETN, without Christian Kirk, some of these other pieces, this is just a subpar offense there in Jacksonville. So despite being home, despite being desperate for a win, Minnesota, they need to continue to keep this ball rolling. They need to continue winning and dominantly because they're in the most stacked division in football at this point in time. And if they want any chance at the 1 seed in the NFC, they need this win. So I'm going to have them winning this game on the road, and I'm going to have them covering the spread at -4. Amir, what's your game spread on the week?
So for my spread, my favorite spread this week, I have the Atlanta Falcons covering the -3.5 against the Saints. And so for me, I think this game right here, Derek Carr obviously last week and that offense last week looked lackluster against that Panthers defense. And I'm be honest, the whole entire Saints organization is in shambles. The only thing I'd say I'm slightly worried about is the Saints getting that post coach fire bump after this fire at Dennis Allen. But this Atlanta team is honestly rolling. They're honestly solid on both sides of the ball. The defense has been shaky, but I think they covered this line with ease.
Yeah, Chris Olave is probably going to be out for this game as well. So no Marshawn Lattimore now as he is on his way to
Yep.
Washington. So I like that line as well. That was going to be my pick, but I was worried about that new, I guess, that new motivation that usually comes with a new coach, even if it
Yeah.
is an interim. But that, of course, the game's line. Now let's head to game total spreads. Of course, over under. Let's go to Monday Night Football for me. We have a Miami offense that, of course, we know how high powered and how fun they are to watch on a weekly basis. They're going to the LA Rams home. The LA Rams and the Miami Dolphins, they are both in desperate places. They need these wins more so than ever. Two high powered offenses. Puka should only be more involved for the Rams this week. Both of them also have some injuries on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm going to take the over. A fun Monday night football game. That's a mouthful, but over 49.5. I think that's way too low. Now, again, these lines are as of last night. They could have changed as of this morning, but over 49.5 for the Monday
Yeah.
night football game. Amir, where are you going?
So for my game total, I have Philadelphia versus Dallas covering the over for 41.5. And I'm be honest, this line is a bit high. Just for the simple fact that Philly has some games where they win like 28-3 or like 28-10, and the fact that honestly, I chose this line before I fully knew Dak wasn't playing this week. So tread lightly with this line. Honestly, I say take an alt line, but I think Philly's gonna blow them out. This Dallas defense is honestly terrible. Saquon might rush for like 150 or 200 yards on them. AJ Brown, if he's playing, he might get like 150. If not, Devontae Smith should feast. And so, even if Dallas doesn't score that many points, I think Philly's going to absolutely dominate them.
Man, I don't know what the line is in that New England and Chicago game, but let me tell you something. Take the under in that one, right? Take the under in that one, or maybe even look at that London game between the Giants and the Panthers. The over-under must be like 30 in that game, as crazy as that might sound. But those are our bets on the week. Again, not betting advice, YouTube, but those are what we're doing this week. Let's get into our Week 10 power rankings officially past the midseason mark. The trade deadline is behind us, so these are pretty much the teams going forward. Let's get into it here. For me, my top four stays the exact same, so I'm not making any changes, and I'm not going to make you guys wait. So Kansas City at 1, Detroit at 2, Baltimore at 3. Deontay Johnson is going to be making his debut tonight for the offense. Excited to see how he is or how much he's involved this week. And Buffalo at 4, getting a much needed win last week. Of course, 3 of those teams are on at least a 3-game or more win streak. Let's get into it. 5 and 6. The Commanders have been busy, Amir. They brought in a guy like Marshawn Lattimore, of course, for example, to help out this back end but this offense continues to hum. They're playing at an extremely high level, and I think this week is a huge game at home versus Pittsburgh, a very tough defense here. Of course, the number one defense in the NFL. Can Jaden Daniels answer the call? He's done it for 9 weeks now. Can he do it one more time? Get a big statement win against the Pittsburgh Steelers. At 6 is the Minnesota Vikings. They continue to roll. Got a big win last week, and I think they continue against the Jacksonville Jaguars. 7 and 8 are teams that have lost the last couple of weeks. Green Bay, of course, lost last week to the Detroit Lions. Jordan Love's banged up, but on the positive side, they're heading into a bye week, so much needed rest for that entire offense and really just team in general. They lost Preston Smith, so excited to see if that defense can bounce back despite losing a relatively big piece on the defensive front. Houston, of course, drops to 8. Big matchup against Detroit this weekend. Of course, game of the week. Pittsburgh at 9. They play Washington. Big time matchup again, like I mentioned. And Philly enters the top 10. Amir, we talked about it last week. I had a 10A, 10B situation with Atlanta and Philly. I just liked how Philly looked last week. Is it the fact that Saquon did a no-look hurdle? Maybe. But Philly enters my top 10. They should take care of business against Dallas this week. And again, Atlanta is knocking on the door. If I had a 10B spot, Atlanta would be 10B. Amir, you have the same top 2. It's been the same top 2 for pretty much the entire season between the both of us. So we're just going to knock that out of the way. Now, knock it out or start at 10, Amir, and let's know who's in your list.
So, my first two, obviously, KC and Detroit. I think it's these two, then a gap after that. After that, I have Pittsburgh at 10, Atlanta at 9. Now, I know you might say Pittsburgh beat Atlanta, but honestly, this Atlanta team is not the same as it was week 1. I think if they played again, Atlanta wins slightly. Also, I would say, at first, I was kind of putting Pittsburgh in the top 10 just because they were kind of beating up lackluster teams. But I think now Pittsburgh rightfully deserves a top 10 spot. The offense looks way better. The defense is still elite. Russ is honestly rolling. George Pickens is getting involved. And so I think Pittsburgh rightfully deserves this 10th spot. After that, I have Minnesota at 8. Minnesota kind of just needed a couple losses to kind of drop, to kind of get woken up a little bit. Sam Darnold still looks shaky. But that's the biggest thing I was kind of scared about throughout this year, and seeing last week him turn the ball over 3 times. That was definitely questionable, but I think Minnesota's run defense, the run game, and the weapons they have sort of, allows them to make those mistakes, and also with the great coaching. After that, I have Philly at 7. And so Philly for me, I was kind of holding them in the top 10 spot for a while, even when they were losing games. But I think now, they're really rolling right now. My biggest question is Nick Sirianni. Watching last week and seeing him go for 2, like 3, 4 times, even though he didn't need to. Seeing him basically almost blow that lead to Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence having to basically throw the game away for them. Philly honestly got off. And that defense still has a lot of questions, specifically in that secondary, giving up a lot of big plays. But I think that offense alone puts them in that top 7 conversation. After that, I've Washington at 6. The biggest thing about Washington I've been impressed with, and honestly, I didn't realize it until a few days ago, was that, statistically, they have the 6th best pass defense in the league this year. And that was the huge jump. It's honestly been from week 1 to now. Week 1, like week 3 to 4, me and you both were saying this pass defense is honestly questionable.
Yes,
Guys like Emmanuel Forbes, really, really questionable. That secondary alone gave up a lot of big plays, penalties, and stuff like that. But they've honestly been lights out, up to this point in the year. And they only add Marshawn Lattimore, and the offense is honestly great. Jan Daniels, takes care of the football. And really, this week will really kind of be a second really big test, for Jan Daniels and that offense against Pittsburgh. After that, I have Green Bay at 5, even though, the score didn't do them justice to how bad they got smoked by Detroit. We all know Jordan Love is banged up. He's hurt, so, I show him some grace for that. But this Green Bay team is honestly great. The coaching is great on both sides of the ball. The defense honestly looks solid. Offensively, they look amazing. Jalen, has this bye week to kind of get healthy and get back on track. At my 4th spot, I have Buffalo. I'm going to be completely honest. I love Josh Allen, but this Buffalo team, I really struggle putting them in that 4th spot just because I'm really not buying the fact that, this team has shown some really great moments, but some really, really bad moments this year. And I'm still concerned that this team just doesn't have enough talent. But when I'm looking at the rest of these rosters, the only roster I could really say that that probably doesn't have that probably doesn't have as much talent as them, or a second the same tier of talent as like Washington. That's it. But they have great coaches. Other than that, it's a huge gap of talent between them and like Green Bay or like Philly or like Minnesota, like Atlanta and stuff like that. And that's my biggest concern. But I think Josh Allen is honestly playing that good.
Yeah,
And Baltimore at three, no doubt. Baltimore's dominant. The offense is dominant. The defense is absolutely terrible. But Lamar and Derrick Henry is honestly a nightmare.
yeah, a big time game for Baltimore tonight. Of course, again, they're at home against the Cincinnati Bengals. Divisional matchup, always fun. And T. Higgins is out. So the Baltimore Ravens should take care of business. Now, Amir, you decided to heckle me over the weekend. You were texting me, you were saying, hey, you took Houston. And let me just
You did
clarify
take
for
Houston.
everybody. If you go back to the podcast at the
He
18
is
minute
a
mark,
fraud.
I said that I was thinking about it, but I was gonna stick with the New York Jets. And I did. I stuck with the New York Jets and they ended up winning. Regardless, 11-4 for the both of us last week. On the year, I mean, how many channels are you gonna find that do it better than us here? I've seen different experts, so to speak.
Yeah,
Whether if they have their own articles or different channels, whatever the case is, nobody's guessing the games at the level that we are. I mean,
yeah,
I'm at 70%. Amir, you're at 67. We're both going to cross 100 wins this week, hopefully, right? And of course, we're both on track to hit that 200 win mark if we include the postseason. But let's get into it here. Now, again, Amir and we are picking against strictly money lines if there's any confusion there. But Baltimore, we have winning tonight. The Giants getting a win there in London over the Carolina Panthers. Chicago, San Fran, Kansas City, Buffalo, Washington, Minnesota, all the favorites. But again, sometimes 2 plus 2 equals 4, and sometimes the obvious pick is the right pick. Now, the only matchup I want to highlight here, Amir, is that Pittsburgh and Washington matchup. I mean, that's just one matchup that I kept going back and forth. And I've asked, different people outside the podcast, who would you go with in that matchup? I don't know because this defense is so talented in
yeah,
Pittsburgh. And at the end of the day, if Jaden Daniels has an off game, is there enough around him to carry
yeah,
the load and to put this team over the top against a probably a top 3 defense in the league at the moment at this point in time with probably the defensive player of the year in TJ Watt? This defense has only gotten better in Pittsburgh with Preston Smith now added into the mix. They added Mike Williams into the offense. I'm not sure he's going to play much Sunday, but going forward, he will. But this offense has only gotten better in Pittsburgh with Mr. Unlimited leading the charge. Amir, we're both going with Washington, but personally, why are you going with Washington against the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Well, for me, even though Pittsburgh's offense has looked great this past few weeks, like I just mentioned a few moments ago, I just think Washington is just playing that great, and seeing Washington with the lackluster talent still, play toe to toe with a team like Baltimore, and really kind of show up the rest of the league and show that it doesn't matter who's in front of them, they can really compete. I've seen them play above their talent level, and so for me, Washington being at home. Like I mentioned, the past few weeks, their pass defense has been pretty impressive, and so my biggest concern is that if Najee Harris gets going,
Yeah.
that's the only thing I'd kind of be scared about because Washington's run defense has been terrible so far. But I just think this Washington offense can honestly take care of the football. I'd say one more thing I'm mostly concerned about is that this team is eventually going to be asking Dan Daniels to do too much, for a rookie quarterback.
Yes.
That's really what I'm scared about in the long run. But I think this week, I think they handle business.
Yeah, I think when you look at two teams that are on the same tier of teams, I always give the advantage to the home team. And honestly, that was the deciding factor for me. But again, like you mentioned, I think come playoff time, they might be asking him to do a little bit too much as far as being a rookie and leading a team. But two teams that are incredibly coached, right? And it should be a really, really good game, whether high or low scoring. Excited for that matchup. Now, in the late slate of games, we have Atlanta, the Chargers, the Jets on the road at Arizona. Despite the Jets being 3 games under 500, we have them getting a big win here against the Arizona Cardinals, who are leading their division in the NFC West. The Philadelphia Eagles, the Detroit Lions, and we disagree on the Monday night matchup with the LA Rams. I'm taking them yet again. You're betting against the Rams, Amir. So hopefully that trend continues. You're taking Miami on the road. We'll start here with the Jets. Why are you taking the Jets in this matchup again at Arizona, a team that leads their division, and the Jets have so many questions?
So Arizona last week looked great. The defense looked a lot better. They basically neutralized the entire Chicago pass offense and run game. But to be honest, I couldn't take that leap with a grain of salt because the play calling was terrible. We all know Chicago's offensive play calling is putrid, despite they have all that talent. But seeing the Jets last week beat Houston, sort of provide life in that team. Seeing the Rodgers and Devontae Adams connection finally be on full effect. Also see the defense sort of step up in that second half and shut Houston down. I just think the Jets get it done. I keep on betting for the Jets week by week. I keep on basically hold them to a standard which they haven't reached yet. But I think this week they honestly just get it done.
Yeah, there's definitely a different vibe around this team now, and even though
Yeah,
they're 3-6, I'm still confident that this team can make a run for the playoffs. And
yeah,
all you
me
got to do is
too.
get there. Once you get there, it's a different ball game, right? If you are any team in the playoff field. For the Cardinals, though, I love Kyler Murray. I just think that this offensive play calling is so bad. It's really just get James Conner the ball and get out the way. And
Yeah,
if that doesn't work, the offensive play calling is just not the greatest. So guys like Marvin Harrison aren't getting the touches or even the targets that they should be on a weekly basis,
that's the
despite
biggest
being,
thing.
yeah, I mean, despite being uber talented. Trey McBride has been getting a little bit more consistent as far as his usage on a weekly basis, but it's still not to where the level that you would think should be. Having those two very talented receivers in McBride and Marvin Harrison, they're not getting the ball as much as you think they would. Or at least if I was the coach, I'd be getting them the ball a heck of a lot more. Let's just say that. But we have the Jets taking care of business on the road. Big time win for them. Now, the Monday night matchup here. Why do you have Miami on the road going to LA despite the Dolphins' questions, getting a big time win against the Rams?
Well,
With
I'll be honest.
Puka,
This
by the way, your favorite player in the league, Puka Nakuya, he's going to be back this week.
yeah.
He's going to be more involved.
Yeah, I'm be honest. Puka lost his head last week, which is rare of him to,
Yes.
to swing on a player. But other than that, this Rams defense has been terrible so far. The run defense has been arguably the worst in the league. The pass defense has been bad. Tre'Davious White just got traded. He was old, and so I think for Miami, seeing the way Tua has been playing, seeing them almost beat Buffalo in Buffalo, and them having to hit a 57-yarder for the win just to beat Miami. I think Tua and watching him play the past 2 weeks, seeing him take care of the football, not turn the ball over, air it out. Even though Tyreek hasn't really had a chance to really eat so far, I
He's
think this
due.
is a game where Tyreek Hill just goes for like 100 or 150 after being dormant the past 5-6 weeks. I really think Miami can really get it done, and seeing that offense honestly look a lot better with Tua back. He's playing way more confident, way happier. He's
Yes.
finally sliding feet first and not diving to the ground. Thank God.
Right.
But my Miami, the whole Miami franchise, honestly, seems to be happy that he's really back and really behind them as well.
To me, the deciding factor was, hey, two great offenses. We know that, right? Two questionable defenses. We also know that. But the Rams are home and they have the head coaching advantage by, I think, a little bit of a wide margin there. So those were kind of the factors for me. But of course, if we make any changes to our picks, let me clarify, they will be put in the comments section. So any changes, be on the lookout on Sunday. We'll make those before the 1 o'clock kickoff. The last thing we want to touch on here in today's video is, of course, the race for Travis. Of course, Travis Hunter, elite two-way player, one of the most talented prospects we've ever seen. Of course, plays for Colorado, who, Amir, we'll have to maybe give our thoughts on that next week. But they just released the college football playoff rankings. A lot of questions and a lot of teams that were treated unfairly, like Indiana. Regardless, New England is at number one, Jacksonville at two. The Saints, they've lost 7 straight games. Talking about tanking. They're at three. They just fired their head coach. Carolina at four, despite Bryce Young looking better and more confident on a weekly basis. And hey, we're back where we belong. The Cleveland Browns are back in the top five, and I don't think we're going to escape this time. I think we're going to stay in this top five for the foreseeable future. We just moved a guy like Zadarius Smith to the Detroit Lions. So this defense, as if it didn't have to do enough, now they're going to have to make up for, I guess, more outside of Myles Garrett. And his job's going to be a lot harder because he's going to be even more. He's going to get even more attention and more, I guess, focus throughout the remainder of the season. Amir, any thoughts on these 5 teams and the race for Travis Hunter?
I think Travis Hunter goes to New England. Even if New England was to get that third or that fourth pick, I think he undoubtedly goes there. And I think for Jacksonville, they're honestly leaning towards getting like out like Will Campbell, getting an offensive lineman because that offensive line is absolutely terrible. And Trevor Lawrence has been dealing with a bad offensive line, for basically the entirety of his career.
Yes.
And I think at this point, it's without a doubt New Orleans is getting a quarterback. Carolina's going to grab a quarterback as well. also a team that's slightly, outside of that top five. Like a team like the Raiders, they're going to fight for a quarterback too. And for Cleveland, I think we will go to quarterback. If a guy like Shador is available, I think by the end of the year, a guy like Cam Ward will kind of be second in that top
I think
quarterback
it's a
race,
clear
or a
top
guy like
two.
Ewers as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I think I think for us, as Browns fans, really honestly, I don't know, because I'm kind of in between where it's like I'd rather us just tank it and grab a quarterback rather than having to deal with the whole quarterback drama next year with Deshaun and everything. Us having to force Jameis out there, find a terrible offensive line, with no weapons. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, like our receiving core just went from like a manageable receiving core to the worst in the league within like 3 weeks out of nowhere, which is crazy. The offensive line has been putrid. A bunch of injuries there. The defense has been questionable, and so for us, I have no idea.
My last thoughts before we get out of here. I'm actually excited, Amir. I'm excited for the fact that, we can use the excuse that so many franchises have used the last couple of years, where they have a veteran quarterback. Us, of course, Deshaun Watson will be back next year. And we can say, hey, we're going to draft a rookie to motivate the veteran. When has that actually ever played out? When have they actually not just kept the veteran and then just had the rookie sit for years and years outside of Green Bay with Jordan Love, but they had a first ballot Hall of Famer in Aaron Rodgers? We can use that
Right.
excuse. And I'm excited because Watson, if we get a rookie quarterback, he could be like, hey, I'm going to go show the world or the other 31 franchises that I'm still a really good quarterback, and he's going to play his best football, at least theoretically. And we're going to have a rookie quarterback learning from whoever else we have in that quarterback room, and he can develop and he can learn the NFL game at the NFL pace. And whenever he's ready, we can hand the keys over. And hopefully, of course, in Cleveland, we can finally find the one. So I'm excited actually for this quarterback drama that's to come here in Cleveland. And that is a shocker because we've never figured out that quarterback position. But we're officially in November, Amir. So again, we're approaching Thanksgiving, of course, and the cold part of the year for us here in the Midwest. But again, that is week 10. Of course, that is ahead of us. Should be a great week of football. Next week, not sure what we're going to do, but we're going to come up with something fun. Amir, any last thoughts before we get out of here? And of course, thank you for joining the show yet again.
No last thoughts, man.
Yeah, all right. Well, episode 244. If you enjoyed, if you made it to this point, of course, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, tell a friend to tell a friend, and that is going to do it. We're this close to 18,000, and we'll see you guys next week. Get out of here.